Hey folks, this is Brian Gordon in San Antonio, Texas. Today we're going to talk a little bit about using greywater in your garden systems. And this is different from like harvesting rainwater. Rainwater is another way to kind of bring water into your garden system. But unfortunately it often takes a large tank or things like that, and those can get pretty pricey whenever you get them. So one of the quickest ways that you can do it is using greywater, which is household water that you would normally have soap in it or things like that that you would wash with. And this allows you to, that's my dog, this allows you to, if it's not containing a lot of chemicals in it, or it's a biodegradable soap, then you're able to deposit it in your garden system. Black water, on the other hand, is things like toilet water, where the matter is a little bit more dense and it could potentially be harmful. That needs to be dealt with in a different way. But today, with using greywater, one of the most common ways that we can do that is by using our washing machine, our clothes washing machine. So you can use other appliances like dishwashers, your sinks, and your bathtubs and things like that. But today we're going to talk about the most easiest one that has its own pump system already in it, which is your washer machine. And so this is where it all starts. We got our washer machine, and these work really well because typically washer machines, at the bottom of them will have a pump installed, and that pump is made to be able to draw a hose line up like this and out into a drain that's usually in the wall space. So what we've done is that drain that's usually in the wall space, we've extended it out into this drain line here. This goes directly out to the sewer system, and then we have a new pipe that we installed that's for greywater that's going to go directly out into the yard. This will go right outside the house and then travel on down. The reason why you'd want to still have access to both of them, and the reason why we use a system like this, which is easy manual exchange instead of a system that might switch over the water on its own or redirect its route. This allows us to change it. If we're using something in the garden, we want to again make sure that we're using a biodegradable soap that works well in these kinds of greywater systems. And if we're not going to use that kind of soap, or we're cleaning with other chemicals, or we're dealing with harsh dyes and things like that, soaps like this, then you'd want it to drain into the sewer system. Things like these soaps will often have a higher amount of salt content, and they can sometimes be damaging to plants. So we have the option to be able to move back and forth easily depending on what load that we're having. One thing to keep in mind is also, if anybody else is coming, make sure you have instructions on how to use the system. So here you can see the pipe drains out, the drain comes out of this pipe, out of the wall, and it comes up into this T-shape. This T-shape is going to allow basically a vent pipe that'll allow the air that needs to flow through. And in case if it also backs up down the line, this is so tall that it's able to fill up with some of the backed up water as it starts to come back down and run slightly in a slope downward towards the garden. As the water comes out along the side of the house, it continues to slope downward, and then comes through this exchange here where we change out from PVC, and then we tie it in a more flexible hose. This flexible hose continues on downward at a slope and goes out towards the garden, and it goes into a dugout pit. It's important to have a pit that this water can stay in the area that you want to deposit it and allow it to soak in. It comes out right there, and it'll fill up this pit. This pit needs to be able to withstand the several flushes from the washer machine. So we're looking at anywhere from 40 to 80 gallons of water per flush. And so you want a pit that is able to hold that capacity, because we want this to stay directly in the area, because it's really important. This is for native landscapes, fruit trees, like some of these figs or apple tree, goji berries, pollinators, peaches. Things like that can be watered with Greywater systems. We want to make sure that we avoid any potential of the gray water getting onto any vegetable plants, because that can come in contact with us directly as we eat it, or if it's too close sometimes to the root zone, they can take it up in the plant there if there's any potential contaminants that are still left in that water. Whenever we use fruit trees, the reason why they are generally safe is because the trunk in the process here acts as a really strong filter. So any potential hazards are getting filtered through here, and by the time we get to the fruit, it shouldn't be contaminated. Other things like pollinators or things that you're planning not to consume but still benefit in the overall garden, those are things to kind of consider. And it's really important to maintain moisture in the ground, because that helps as we water, especially through the Texas heat or really hot summers. We really need to make sure that we have the ground not drying out completely, so that whenever we do water, it's not all taken and soaked up all around it. It's able to stay exactly where the plants are and where they need it. The last thing we talk about is if you can't dig a large trench, or you got a really small area where that water is only safe to be deposited, you can use a 55-gallon barrel, which will have 55 gallons of storage capacity of the water. Drill a bunch of holes in it, bury it down in the soil, put some rocks on the bottom, and allow it to drain out as water comes from the washer machine into there. Hopefully it'll drain enough within each flush for the next flush of water to be coming in, but this can be directly put right next to a tree or a root zone, or maybe a guild of plants that you're working on, or a collection of all those kinds of groupings that can be placed around the water tank. One thing that's kind of also important to note is you do not want to store gray water. You want to make sure that this is drained out and absorbed into the landscape as soon as possible. Storage of rainwater or gray water for longer than 12 or 24 hours can develop potential harmful bacteria in it through the particles that are still in that, because it's not a completely cleaned out water. So it needs to drain into the landscape as soon as possible, and that's why there's other systems available. Cool, so make sure to like and add us and subscribe. This is the first time that we're going to be trying some of this. I hope it is of value to some of y'all. We need to make sure that we try to share as much of knowledge that we know about different things, and be able to communicate and educate on a community level. So appreciate y'all. Thanks. Bye.